Ada for refusing to give my friend my house for her wedding after she requested a paternity test, which forced her to cancel the wedding. Sandra and I have been friends for more than 20 years, we are 30 to 32. Sandra is marrying Andres, and I am married to Ian. Some useful information. Andres and I are originally from the same country and region. We share many features. We both have wide faces, deep brown eyes, and long, straight black hair. If you didn't know better, you may think we were siblings. I met Andres 6 years ago and introduced him to Sandra. He proposed 2 years ago. I own a lovely house in my home country that I was eager to lend to Sandra and Andres for their wedding. My property resembles a finca and has 10 rooms. Normally, I would rent it out for weddings at a premium fee, but I was happy to offer it to them for free, on the condition that they provide their own caterers and have their guests strip their beds after they leave. The issue. Sandra became increasingly reclusive about 3 months ago. She did not respond to my texts, and we did not meet up. 2 weeks ago, she and Andres showed up at my door. They sat us down, including my husband, and stated she felt my kid was Andres' biological daughter and asked for a paternity test for peace of mind. I was in disbelief and couldn't say anything. My husband lost his passion and raised his voice, telling Sandra that she was being really dumb. Sandra pointed out that my daughter resembles Andres. I stated that Andres and I look similar. She kept shaking her head, saying my daughter will resemble my spouse rather than an exact replica of myself. The evening ended poorly. I agreed to take the test if they paid for it. The results came back last Friday, revealing that Andres was not the father. We also conducted a test to ensure that my husband is the father. Sandra cried and attempted to hug me. I told her I didn't want to, and that I didn't want to be friends with her right now. She kept repeating her concerns were valid and made a remark about women from your country being more likely to do that. I was angry at the time. I told her she could forget about using the venue and that I no longer wanted her in my life. She began crying, but I made her leave. Her mother and she have been contacting me, stating they are unable to find a new venue. I still said no. Sandra called me 20 minutes ago, sobbing, and said the wedding was canceled due of me. Am I the asshole? Should I have allowed her to utilize the venue at the regular charge, or was what I did acceptable? Andres was not cool with this. He appeared frustrated. He was really unhappy and basically agreed to this so she would drop it. I didn't include it since I didn't see its significance to the disagreement between me and her. Update: they are no longer together. Sandra just sent me an apology email and, for some reason, paid me €25.67. Anyway. Ada for robbing my wife's affair partner, which has resulted in their divorce. I, 32, have been married to Madison, 30, my soon-to-be ex-wife, for 4 years. We are currently undergoing counseling, but it is not going to help. About a year ago, I discovered she was having an affair after returning home to find their clothes in our living room and sounds coming from our bedroom. I lost it. I was grabbing my cricket bat out of the front closet when I paused to consider the consequences. I didn't want to go to jail. Instead, I stole all of their clothes and left discreetly. I proceeded to a friend's house, but not before dumping all of the garments in a McDonald's rubbish can. I turned off my phone and shit-faced with my friend. His wife hosed us down in the morning. When I turned my phone back on, I received dozens of calls and texts from Madison. I was initially concerned since she had obtained my most recent flight information. Then I was irritated that I hadn't called her to let her know I'd be home early. Then I freaked out because the house had been broken into. Then she went nuts because she realized it was me. They only become more deranged. The guy she was with is 5 inches shorter than me and weighs approximately 60 pounds less. So if he had stolen my clothes, it would be clear. He ended up asking a friend to go retrieve his backup keys from his residence. Unfortunately for him, his wife detected a rat and tracked his pal back to my house. She watched him leave in big clothing. Long story short, she snapped pictures and discovered evidence of his cheating. This resulted to the cancellation of their prenuptial agreement. This resulted in significant financial losses for him. It's all one enormous shit show. It took a few months, but my wife persuaded me to try and forgive her. We started going to counseling and were working through it. Until recently. During a counseling session, she told me that I was wrong to steal his wallet, phone, and car keys. She added that his divorce is costing him a lot of money, that I should have handled it more maturely, and that it was my fault. I've never admitted to taking his stuff. To begin with, I was concerned he might contact the cops. Then I didn't want to offer her ammunition in case she sought a divorce. Now I simply don't care. I informed her that her adultery was the reason her partner was getting divorced. And I hope his ex gets everything. I'm still not living at home. I have my own place and am filing for divorce. Now that I understand how she feels, it's kind of a slap in the face that she blames me for his divorce. AITA for telling my husband I told you so and laughing at me when we received the paternity test results. I, 27F, have been married to my husband, 28M, for 2 years and gave birth to our daughter 5 weeks ago. I'll try to make this short so that I don't waste your time with unnecessary stuff. Our kid was born with blonde hair and pale blue eyes, although my husband and I both had brown hair and eyes. My husband freaked out and refused to listen to my explanation that babies are sometimes born with lighter hair and eyes that gradually darken. He ordered a paternity test and threatened to divorce me if I didn't comply, so I complied. After my daughter and I returned home from the hospital, my husband went to stay at his parents' house for the first 3 weeks to be away from me while I healed, and he told them what was going on. My mother-in-law called and told me that if the paternity test indicated that the child was not his, she would do everything in her power to ensure that I was taken to the cleaners during the divorce proceedings. During this time, I had my sister to lean on for support and assistance with the baby care. We received the findings yesterday, and my husband came home to review them with me. I was on the couch in the living room, so he sat next to me and we began reading the findings. They showed that he was the father, and my husband looked astonished and ashamed, his eyes wide as he stared at it. I couldn't help but say, "I told you so," and began laughing at the way he looked. My husband broke out of his amazement and yelled at me for laughing at him. We argued for a while, with him yelling at me, till my sister arrived downstairs and my husband shut up. After that, my husband returned to his parents' place to clear his head, and 2-3 hours later, my mother-in-law called to chastise me for laughing in my husband's face, as it was evidently kicking him while he was down. She also left a number of unpleasant SMS this morning, essentially saying the same thing. I don't think I'm an AH, but I'd want an outsider's take on this. Edit, I didn't know I wrote me instead of he. Sorry, but I have a headache. Edit, someone asked in the comments, but I can't find it anymore, and I have no history of cheating. AITA for being honest and stating that my wife looks awful after her surgery. My wife underwent plastic surgery recently. We discussed it, and I was against it. It was not my decision, and in the end, I had no say. She looks strange now. She had fat removed from her face, lip fillers, a neck lift, and other procedures that I don't fully understand. She's giving me uncanny valley vibes now. It freaks me out. She is now completely cured, and she wants us to return to normal. Like when I initiate sex. I have done so, but not to the extent that I used to. When I do, I make an effort to keep the light to a minimum. It's been a few months, and I'm starting to hate looking at her. Obviously, she noticed. She's been pushing me to tell her what's going on. I tried to persuade her I was just weary from work. Alternatively, I could be exhausted. Almost everything except the truth. She broke down and inquired whether I was having an affair. I replied that I wasn't. She asked to see my phone. I unlocked it and handed it to her. I wasn't concerned about her finding anything because there was nothing to find. She spent an hour looking through it and discovered nothing. She wanted me to explain why I had changed. I tried to explain that I wasn't really interested right now. Nothing I said was suitable for her. She continued digging. I finally spoke the truth. I was neither harsh nor brutally honest. I basically informed her that I didn't like her new face and was turned off. She asked if that was why I had turned out all the lights. I said yes. She began crying and stated that she needed time alone. She went to reside with her sister. I've been called every name in the book since this happened. Her sister called me a piece of trash for disparaging my wife's appearance. Her buddies all think I'm a jerk. I tried not to say anything. I can't force myself to find her appealing. I still love her, but her face is strange now. She resembles the blue alien from The Fifth Element. AITA for telling Emmael she was dead when she arrived at labor and delivery without my mother? For the past 3 months, it has been a well-known plan that when I, 30F, went into labor, my husband would drive me to the hospital and my Emmael would pick up my mother, children, and grandma, all from the same place. My mother-in-law and mother were both meant to be in the delivery room. My grandmother was to watch my 2 children in the waiting room. Everyone agreed on the plan. My husband and I now have 2 sons, and my mother was present for both of their births. She helped me get through a lot of the emotional anguish and terror, especially after my last who nearly killed me. I was bleeding out on the table, and my mother was the only one who could keep me calm. I needed her to be there for me mentally while I was with this baby. So we planned this out months in advance, and everyone was on the same page. However, I go into labor. We make phone calls to Emmael and my mother. I told my mother to get ready and my mother-in-law to go get her. An hour and 15 minutes later, Emmael arrives to the hospital without my mother, children, or grandma. She said, "Well, it's late, so we should just let everyone sleep." It was 9:30 p.m., and then set her ass down on the chair in the delivery room and checked her phone. I told her in a pissed-off tone to go get my mom, that was the plan, I needed my mom, etc., but she refused. At one point, she stated that she did not feel up to driving that far. So I told her to get the fuck out of the room because she was dead to me. The degree of hate and disdain I felt toward her in this moment is not something I expect to overcome anytime soon. She was enraged, claiming that my mother had already witnessed 2 births and that she had done nothing wrong and was just being respectful of people's sleep, and that she was being taken out instead of leaving. Now, my mother was able to arrive at the hospital right when I was giving delivery. My children and grandmother were unable to attend, which bothers me greatly. We promised our children they would be the first to meet their sister, aside from us and Grammy. I can never forgive my Emmael for this. I honestly despise her with all of my being. But I'm being told I'm overreacting and that it wasn't a big deal. Aita? My wife arrived home yesterday, and we finally had a long conversation. She explained to me that she underwent the operation because her mother and sister talked her into it. They convinced her that she was beginning to appear old and that if she didn't do something, I would find someone else to be with. That's why her mother provided her the money for the surgeries. Her mother and sister resemble Bruce Campbell in Escape from LA. They are the absolute last individuals on the planet who should be encouraging somebody to get plastic surgery. I used some of the responses I received on my post as discussion points. I told her how much I loved her and that she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. I assured her that the surgery would take some time to settle in, and that as I grew accustomed to her new appearance, I would come to like it. She asked if I wanted her to look into getting it reversed. I nearly screamed at her. The last thing I want is for her to muck up her face anymore. I asked her to just leave it and let me get used to it. We talked for nearly 3 hours and agreed that her mother and sister would not be involved in any future decisions in our lives. She is going to leave her face alone so I can get used to it. We want to look for a marriage counselor as well as individual counselors for each of us. I'm going to make an effort every day to show her how attractive she still is, and she's going to make an effort to believe me when I tell her I adore her just as she is. We're going to tell her mother and sister that we're taking a break from them. We are going to block them and get our act together before letting them back into our lives. Ida for explaining to my husband that he is the reason we keep producing children. I am a 30-year-old woman who has 2 daughters and is currently expecting a third. We only found out this morning. During the journey to my husband's mother's place, he expressed his disappointment at having a daughter. He then added, "I should have expected this because you have 3 sisters." I clarified that having 3 sisters has nothing to do with our child's gender. He said it was genetics and that I was the reason for our daughters. I told him it wasn't how biology worked, but he swore it was. He went on to explain that his mother only had brothers, and his 2 oldest brothers each have 2 boys from his mother's side. I told him that didn't make sense because it should be the same for him. He replied no because their wives have more brothers than sisters. He was becoming frustrated, but I was only laughing at him. I explained that he and his 2 older brothers have separate fathers, but out of his father's 8 children, 3 are boys and 5 are girls. The guys determine the gender. He denied this, claiming that all of his father's children with his mother are boys. He dropped it and said he'd ask his mother, who has a degree in biology. So we get to his parents' house for brunch, and he asks his mother whether I am the reason we keep producing females. She simply told him that the men choose the gender, and it is not a 50-50 chance. She went on to explain that having more of one gender increases the likelihood that your next child will be the same gender. So he inquired if he was likely to have a boy. She informed him that if he kept trying, it might work. He simply strolled to his car and stated he was going for a drive. I got a text from him stating I didn't have to embarrass him like that. I was completely confused. Ada for revealing our pregnancy at my brother's wedding, after he proposed at mine. My brother stated he was going to propose during my wedding. I told him no. That today was about me and my wife, and we didn't want any distractions. My mother lost her stuff. She stated that he wanted family members he would not see for a time to be part in the proposal. I stated I didn't give a shit and that if he did, I'd kick him out. He did it. And my mother warned that if I tried to kick him out, she would go as well. I only remember feeling angry within. My brother was married last weekend. Instead of a welcome to the family toast, I took the opportunity to announce that we were expecting our first child. My mother was outraged, but my grandmother instructed her to sit down and shut up. We spent the majority of the reception telling family members we wouldn't see again for a time about our upcoming baby. My mother believes I was an asshole for diverting attention away from my brother on his wedding day. She got furious when I told her that she had threatened to quit my wedding if I kicked him out after he proposed. I have a screenshot of the SMS messages. Ada for disclosing to all of my husband's friends that I had never had an orgasm. My husband's friend recently had a huge birthday celebration, and all of his buddies and their wives attended. No children. One woman I'm close with was angry with her spouse and quipped, "Guys, if they didn't get us off, why would we keep them?" She laughed. I chuckled uncomfortably but appeared uneasy. She asked what was wrong, and she noticed that I was making a strange look. I replied, "I've just never had an orgasm before, so I guess I couldn't relate." When I stated that, about a dozen individuals looked at me, which was really awkward. The wife then said hesitantly, "Is everything okay down there?" To which I replied, "Yeah, just never had anyone try, I guess." For the next 10 minutes, my husband's pals took turns insulting him in a variety of ways. Many ladies stated that they would never marry someone who did not get the job done. My husband made us leave early. When we arrived home, he chastised me about how I had embarrassed him. I mentioned that she inquired, and I have a propensity to be honest. He's been quite distraught for the last few days, and he continues stating he can't communicate to his pals because they now think negatively of him. Ada, for being honest here? Edit, I've raised the issue numerous times in the past. He assures me that it's not a huge issue if he doesn't get me off. Since it isn't that significant, I don't see why I have to keep it hidden like a dirty secret. Ada, for not wanting my mother's boyfriend anywhere near my vagina? So when I arrive home from school today, my mother is in the living room, sobbing. Her boyfriend, the predator, is standing right there next to her. To clarify, she has been a devout, born-again Christian for the past 2 years. Boys are not permitted, and there is a curfew. I have never had sleep or had a boyfriend. So, between sobbing, she tells me the creep spoke with her today and informed her that based on my symptoms, heavy bleeding and period pains, and my disrespectful behavior, he is certain that it is from having sleep. Not even an STD, but the result of forceful intercourse that injured my insides. I had never heard of this before, and when I looked it up later, it wasn't even a thing. Meanwhile, the creep sits there relatively silently, nodding along with what my mother says. I tried to say something, but the creep started on me, telling me don't even bother denying it. I've been a gynecologist for over a decade. I know this when I see it, blah yada yada. My mother then begins yelling at me, "How could you do this to me?" and so on. She believes I've been out and having sleep with lads from school, despite the fact that I've only seen 2 or 3 pals. So then they explained that they agreed on some consequences for what I allegedly did, that I'm grounded, that they're going to replace my iPhone with a dumb phone so I can't use social media, that I'm not allowed to see my friends, and, this is the fake crazy bit, that the creep will perform a weekly purity test invasive vaginal exam to ensure that I'm not actively having gender until they can trust me again. And the first one will be this weekend. I'm completely lost here. Obviously, I am not going through with this, but I have no money and nowhere to stay for even one night. I'm thinking about making up an excuse to dodge the purity thing and keeping my smartphone till I can figure anything out. Any more suggestions are appreciated. AITA for advising my husband that he needs to have my father witness his colonoscopy? I guess this post violates the guidelines of Amethyst Hole. My mother-in-law wants to be present when I give birth. She is a rude and overbearing woman, and none of her own daughters have let her near them when they gave birth. My sisters-in-law are all at least 12 years older than my husband and have finished having children. I am my mother-in-law's last chance to witness the birth of a grandson. I have no intention of letting that judgmental old woman see me down there. She has always objected to me since I have tattoos and do not want to be a stay-at-home wife. I have a lot of tattoos and hope to continue my career. And I have tattoos down there that are none of her concern. My spouse is her baby boy. He is a decent husband who has repeatedly defended me against her. When she attempted to interfere with our wedding, he put his foot down. When she tried to persuade him that we should relocate to his hometown where he could work but I would be unable to find work in my field, he refused because my career is important to me and, while we can live off of his earnings and the cost of living is lower in his hometown, our combined earnings are much higher overall. She started crying to him about how all she wants is to see a grandchild born. All of her pals have done it, and she wants to. He's beginning to break under her emotional blackmail. So I made it clear that the only way I'd accept was if my husband arranged for my father to watch his colonoscopy before to the birth. He'd need a ride anyhow, so it's like 2 birds with 1 stone. He said I was being foolish, but I stated none of my brothers would let my father see them with a camera shoved up their asses, and he felt left out. He finally got my argument, but his mother is furious since I used such a dumb example. She claims that it is not the same thing at all. I offered to convert it to my watching her have a Brazilian wax, but she hasn't phoned in a week. I understand that witnessing a kid born may be her goal, but I am not interested. I'm reconsidering having a child with my wife because of what I recently discovered about her father. Jessica has an older sister named Mary, with whom she is not particularly close. She told me that they had a tremendous falling out over some family drama and no longer talk. I asked her several times about the matter, but she said she doesn't like talking about it and doesn't believe it's essential. It was Jessica's brother's birthday yesterday, and we all gathered at his house to celebrate. Mary made an appearance, and there was plenty of drama. Long story short, she chastised Jessica and her brothers for continuing to associate with their father while knowing that he is a child abuser. Nobody was paying attention to her, and I had no idea what was going on. When Mary left and Jessica and I returned home, I asked her what the heck had happened. She stated that when they were little, Mary claimed that their father molested her. When I questioned if that was true, Jessica stuttered heavily. She admitted that her father used to do awful things, but Mary cut them all off when she reached 18 and moved out. I questioned whether she was admitting that she knew her father was a child molester who had done things to his own daughter. She stated that he no longer does it, that he was simply in a horrible position in his life, and that he apologized to Mary, therefore there is nothing else anyone can do for Mary. I was truly appalled. I feel bad for Mary. Jessica made it appear as if Mary did something wrong and deserved to be expelled from the family. I could never have imagined what transpired. I questioned whether she expected me to be willing to have that man around our future children, and she yelled at me, saying I'm judging him based on something that happened 2 decades ago, and whether I like it or not, he'll be our children's grandfather and a part of their life. I told her that if she insists on having children, we should put it off until we can have real discussions about it. She's furious with me, but I'm not sure how I might react better, to be honest. This feels like a big deal that she's downplaying. Would I be the odd if I texted my husband's best friend to see how she responded? My hubby had a great friend from college. I had never had a problem with her until my wedding a month ago, when my maid of honor overheard her telling another friend of theirs that she has him when she wants him after the friend mocked her about losing him and he being the one who got away. I informed my husband about it a few days ago. I didn't want to ruin our honeymoon, but it was still on my mind, but he denied that anything transpired between them. He said it very calmly. Is it almost too calm? I have no proof, but I trust him. Until I used his phone after mine died. He was driving, and I was creating a playlist on his phone. Then I checked his iMessages, and he had no thread with her. I mean, I know for certain that they text. Nothing. I didn't say anything, but last night I literally saw her name appear among the texts. When he went to bed, I checked, and there were no texts. He's eliminating them. My question is, if I ask, will he deny it? I need to know, and I need proof. Would I be the AH if I started a conversation with her as if I were my husband and asked what was going on?